Hey everyone, Cary here with Cary Kolat, presented by RUDIS. Hey, good question this week. It's probably a little complicated. At the same time, it's not complicated. You know, it's just kind of how you view things. But the question is, at what age do you start implementing high-level technique? The question is, like, if a guy starts out and he's this tall, or a girl and she's 5, 6 years old, at what point do you expand their wrestling? Well, here's how I always feel like I made a jump in my career, that I would always go down and watch West Virginia wrestling practices. As a young kid, my dad would take me down there sometimes, and I would watch Nate Carr and some other people, and I'd watch these college guys, to me, which was high level at the time. And it just made me start to think. Now, obviously I had a talent for wrestling, and I enjoyed wrestling, and I was always trying to improve, and I thought a little bit differently about it. But I think unless you expose people to that, you can't create that environment. So it's like this: if you put somebody in a box and they never watch any outside wrestling, and they only train in your room, and you're the only coach giving them any kind of perspective, which to some extent when people are just starting, that's important. You need a foundation, a baseline. You can't have somebody jumping all over the place, right? And if that's all they ever saw, and they never traveled out of state, and they never traveled out of the school district, and they never traveled out of the county, and they never really expanded across the state, and then eventually left the state and started going to other competitions, what type of wrestler do you think you would have at that point? And that's where exposure comes in. So in terms of when do I implement high-level technique with a younger kid, or one is one, recognize which ones have a little bit more finesse or a little more talent to what they see, and their athletic ability of being capable of doing something. I think almost at any time you can start implementing that stuff if that person can handle it. That doesn't mean you get away from your foundation, your building blocks. You have to have that stuff. We run a program, at Campbell. We run that program. We have some foundational things that we do as a team, as a staff, that we say these are important to our guys. And then we always kind of expand. To sit here and say I don't watch the World Championships, we were just working on a new version of spinning on a guy the other day after watching Sajalayev and some of the things that he does, these little small details of how he gets around a guy when he's got his head down. We were implementing that stuff. And what we implemented went totally against the rule that they had learned forever about blocking, putting weight on the head, blocking the arm, and spinning. We totally changed it. And so we put more time into that. And I think with an athlete, no matter the age group, it's kind of the same thing. Are they capable of handling it? And make sure you're exposing them to that stuff. I know for me, being around Dave Schultz and Foxcatcher and all that stuff for years, I was always, when I first started putting a box in a square stance, and hey, don't let your elbows come out, and keep your head up, and then you go watch some Europeans and they're standing with their feet crossed and sugar-footed and straight up and down, right? You have to watch that kind of stuff and see who's capable of handling it. So to implement it, the kid's got to have a solid foundation. At some point you realize, hey, this kid has a little more of a talent, or a little more body feel, and make sure you're exposing them to video and YouTube and all that stuff we have now. And get them in front of other coaches. That's really important. You can't just keep somebody in a box. And I think if you get closed-minded and you don't expose them to other coaches, well, then you're shrinking that development, mentally and physically on the mat. So great question. I like questions like that. But I'll talk to you all next week.